Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com.
Jazz hands.
I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by these rowdy boys over here, Shotgun Spratling and Ryan Abraham. We're here to talk about USC's historic loss, the second one in the Coliseum.
Keely, you keep saying that.
Third, I think, but yeah.
It was. What?
Third loss in the third historic
Yes.
loss.
Okay, sure.
No problem.
Sure, okay.
They add up. This is hard to count.
Sorry, it's been a long season already. I used to say this back in the day, and I'm going to bring it back. Tunnel Vision is free weekly therapy for you guys, for USC fans. We're here for you. Put your comments, your questions, your concerns in the chat box wherever you are. I believe we're live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We'll try to answer your questions as best as possible. We have a lot to talk about tonight. We'll talk about USC's loss. Heading into the bye week, what should USC focus on? We got to hear from Dante Williams in his Sunday night press conference, so we'll tell you what we heard from him, as well as injury updates. We got an update on Michael Trigg. That was a bang-bang play yesterday, so we'll get into what we saw or what we heard from Dante on the latest. And then also we'll take calls tonight, 5124-TUNNEL. Call in if you have a question. Please keep it brief. Mute your stream. We love taking questions from you guys as long as they're brief. So
Yeah, brief. Brief questions.
Brief is the question, yes.
You don't want Keely mad at you. She gets mad at us a lot. We don't like it. She'll get mad at you, the callers. Yeah.
Sure. Alrighty, guys. Like I said, it was a pretty sight yesterday in the Coliseum. I mean, what are your takeaways from the game?
Wow. Yeah, it was pretty bad. And I didn't, actually, props to Shotgun. He's the only one that picked USC not to cover that one. So he ties Keely on our picks pool thing.
Man, my undefeated streak is over.
It is, yeah. But I really did think that, I felt like USC was going to come back and you're going to see somewhat of a competent offense. We didn't know what state Utah was going to be in. They had a lot of stuff going on, after the bye week. Utah just came in and did the exact same thing that Stanford did and Oregon State did, all of them in their own way, all of them a little bit different, but they were able to come in and be more physical than USC and push the Trojans around and really make it a non-game. Like USC was out of it, and we saw the Coliseum. It wasn't bad. There's still, there was a bunch of people there. It wasn't. We had a tailgate before the game. I think there was a lot more people on campus from what I heard than around the Coliseum, just because it was like the parents' weekend thing. But I thought the atmosphere wasn't bad again at the beginning. The Stanford one was the best, probably to start off, but it's the exact same thing we've seen week after week where everyone's filing out of there. And, I don't know. I mean, Dante Williams afterwards was talking about, the team never gave up. They had a lot of fight. And I just didn't see that. It just didn't seem like they had that kind of fight. And this is the problem. When I asked them today about, you have to be the interim head coach for 10 games. Like, that's a long stretch. Usually that doesn't happen. Like, it might be a couple of games, whatever, but to do it for basically the majority of the season, like, how do you keep these guys motivated? And, I talked about really not being able to play for the Pac-12 championship with 3 losses, and Arizona State's undefeated. He said it still wasn't out of the question. So to me, I don't know what you guys thought about that, but that just seemed to be like, you're not really getting it. Like, how are you going to keep these guys motivated all year when pretty much everyone is on the hot seat? Like, every coach is going to be gone, most likely, or potentially gone. Players can leave. Like, this is really, like, you just don't want to have a throwaway season. And the way it's going now, it just feels like it's a throwaway season.
I will say that his answer was correct, though. He said, I don't want to say that we're out of it. He said, I never think that way. And he said, especially because the Pac-12, everyone beats up on each other.
It's true.
And we've seen that time and time again. I mean, Oregon State looked like world beaters against USC. They beat Washington, win that game in dramatic fashion, and then drop a turd to Washington State despite running for like 300-something yards. They should have controlled that game the entire time, and somehow they still lost that game. So, UCLA looks really good at the beginning of the season, really struggled. So Is someone going to step up and be that team? Is it Arizona State? I mean, it's possible. They have a lot of veteran defenders. They have Jaden Daniels, who takes care of the ball. And that's a huge thing because that's determined a lot of the games in this conference right now is the turnovers. And USC had one yesterday, but the USC's biggest issue was not capitalizing on opportunities. So it was the opposite of giving away extra opportunities. They had 31 plays early in the game and came away with 3 points. Their first 3 drives, they had 31 plays.
Wow.
So that means they're driving the ball. They had
Yeah.
8 plays, 12 plays, 11 plays their first 3 drives, and they came away with 3 points on those drives.
Yeah, you can't have that. It was like very Stanford-esque where they're going in and driving into opponent's territory and weren't able to do anything with that. But here's the thing, yes, because mathematically is USC in it? Sure. But when you have 3 home games in conference and you're not within 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter in any of them, you're not in the conference race. What I wanted to hear from him was something about it doesn't matter about we can't think about Rose Bowls or whatever. We just have to play good football at home. And this is how we're going to motivate guys going into the bye week. You know what I mean? That's where I had the issue with it. You're like, oh, we're still alive. That's not what I wanted to hear.
He said something similar in the post-game press conference from what you wanted to hear. I mean, it's something where he has to motivate his team somehow. He's not going to be like, yes, media reporter, this season's over and I'm just stuck in the mud as an interim head coach. He has to say something. It's a weird position for him to be in.
No, I get that, but I wouldn't focus on the motivating factor is not going to be we can win the Pac-12 South. I think you have to throw that out the window. We need to be within 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter of a game at home. I think that's a more achievable goal. It just didn't seem like.
Can't you have both?
I mean,
I understand your point. And to go along with Keely on this, what's his mentality? What has his mentality been since he took over? 1-0 each day.
Yeah.
So that is, we're going to focus on today. We got to do better, blah, blah, blah. But, when he was asked a question about, you mentioned the Pac-12 championship and threw that into the question, then he's going to respond something about the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah.
So, they're really struggling right now. They have some big deficiencies that have come back to haunt them from previous recruiting classes. That's a big part of it, the nose tackle position. Their linebackers are not playing great. Kanai Mauga actually played a really good game last night.
Okay.
But, that gets really overshadowed when the other team's able to, kind of do what they want at will. And the cornerbacks, are on islands the entire time because USC's not getting enough pressure and they're trying to bring 5, 6, 7 guys. So they're saying, hey, we trust those cornerbacks. They can make that one-on-one. Let's try to find a way to get pressure. I think the numbers now – PFF does, they do an early grade and they go back and reassess it and look at it a little bit closer. But looking at it, the early grades from last night were that Utah had 18 pressures. So Keaton Slow was under attack. Now he dropped back 53 times. So, but how many do you think USC had?
Pressures on Cameron Rising, who had he was
22 of 28. USC had 5 pressures.
Ooh,
according to PFF.
Yeah, that's not good.
So, if you're keeping those guys on islands and you're not getting any pressure, then you're basically just giving up defenders. And that was the case last night. They weren't able to get to Rising and really cause him any troubles there. Corey Foreman gets a sack, but that again is one where he made a second move, and then was able to get to him. It wasn't like it was an initial beat. Those DBs are out there for a long time, and they got hosed last night. They got worked by the wide receivers, and that's not a wide receiver core that you look at and go, wow, that's a really talented group.
No, there was a weakness for Utah.
Yeah, it was the guy's first catch was a touchdown on the flea flicker, I believe, and then Parks' touchdown was his first touchdown of his career.
I mean, they have good tight ends, but you didn't expect the receivers to kind of torch USC.
And
that
Theo
way.
Howard is a guy that I'm high on it going into USC from Westlake and transfers to Oklahoma, now transfers to Utah, but he hasn't really done
UCLA,
anything.
But yeah.
No, from UCLA to Oklahoma, now to Utah.
Yeah.
But he hasn't done much, and he's the one that was kind of the game-changing play to me. That throw, it was 3rd and 7. They throw the ball down the left side to Theo Howard, gets behind Jaden Williams. The safety is not over the top. I don't know where the safety was on that play either. And that gave them life because they hadn't really done anything. They had that one drive, and they were able to catch USC a little bit sleeping with the quick play to Keely to get in and around on the end around. But USC shut them down the very next drive, and They weren't really doing anything on that next drive, and suddenly they throw that pass, and suddenly that opened everything up. The offense opened up for them, and USC wasn't getting the pressure, so now it's one-on-one coverages, and I think that just gave them more confidence. And I said this going in that we didn't know what we'd see from Utah, and if USC could have went out and just attacked them early, which they had a chance. So if they score on those 2 chances in the red zone, and then they were up 10-7, so it would have been 21-7 instead of 10-7. Maybe Utah kind of is like, woe is me, the world is against me, everything that's happened the last 2 weeks, and they don't respond. But I think they're still in the game right there, and then suddenly they get a big play, and they're like, oh, okay, let's go. And that's because USC just hasn't had that killer instinct to be able to put away an opponent for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think another thing that came back to haunt them in this game, they had an opportunity if they were crisp early, especially in the red zone. Suddenly this is a different game, and that's what Graham Harrell said after the game. He's like, oh, we got to do better in the red zone. We got to do better in that middle section, which are all true things. But they don't
like week after week.
They don't have the answers for it. What is going to be? And it was interesting that Keontae Ingram, after the game, told Keely, said, we've got to get more creative on the offensive side. So, and I asked
you asked Dante about that.
Yeah, what do you have to say about that, Shotgun?
And he said, well, they're doing some different things, and you saw the end around to Drake London, the little pop pass to him to pick up a first down. You've seen some different things. But he said that one of the things is, hey, maybe when we get down, we kind of go back to revert to what we know best and what we've done in the past. And, it's interesting. People have brought it out, especially because Utah ran that flea flicker, but they're like, when's the last time USC ran a trick play? Trick plays – can be something that just really get players excited. So that might be something you want to add to the arsenal. I know that's not in Graham Harrell's, wheelhouse normally. He likes to run to green grass, and the system will work. But I think they got to mix it up again, and I think that's one of the areas where they got to do some things different.
Shotgun, you also asked Dante about USC's offensive line play. That was an issue that they struggled with, especially in the second half. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, in the second half, that was the thing. USC moved the ball really well in the first 3 drives of the game, and then got behind. And he said, well, we became one-dimensional in the second half. Well, my issue is they go away from the run. They saw the same thing in the Oregon State game where they're running the ball pretty well, but then they fall behind. They're like, well, we got to pass now. We're behind. We have to pass.
Yeah.
In the third quarter with 10 minutes or 8 minutes or 6 minutes or 4 minutes, there's still time to run the ball. You get down by 3 scores, it's still college football. With the clock stopping on first downs, you still can stay more balanced than they have done in these games when they've fallen behind. And, Utah was able to get all those pressures like I talked about. The offensive line, when Utah was able to pin their ears back, they were constantly getting pressure, and, USC did not play well in the second half as far as the offensive line there.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as this defense, Shotgun, what did you see? I mean, I know you did your quick rewatch. What is the main problem here? Why are we seeing this at this point of the season?
I mean, the biggest issue that's been a constant, for the last month now is tackling. They've got guys that are there in the hole at times, and you turn a 1-yard gain into a 5-yard gain. It changes 2nd and 5 versus 2nd and 9, changes what play call you're getting. That's a big part of it. But again, it's, some of the areas where they don't have that true nose tackle. So he can't, they don't have that guy, and maybe Maximus Gibbs becomes that guy. I was surprised we didn't see a little bit more of him. But to take up 2 blockers so that Drake Jackson's getting that one-on-one and Tuli Tuipulotu's getting a one-on-one, and then they just weren't getting enough pressure on the quarterback that game. So when you don't get any pressure and you're already playing, in man-to-man coverage, and maybe you have a single high safety, but there's just opportunities there. And as Dante said, he was asked about Chris Steele, and it's true, but Chris Steele has not played up to his potential.
Yeah.
He did not play well last night. But it is true what Dante said is that if you're a cornerback, you can play 60 plays perfect, but if you have 2 or 3 where they're bad, that's what people are going to talk about. He said it's a unique position, and that's true, and especially when you're on an island like that. You can play great. If you're a wide receiver and you play great and you don't run a couple routes really well, you kind of slack off or you have a drop in the game, but you still have 10 catches for 100 yards, like people are going to be like, that's a good game for you, right?
Right.
Not so much with a cornerback. And that's the difference. Like if you're an offensive lineman, it's similar. You can have 65 great blocks, but if you have 2 bad ones and you give up sacks, those positions are looked at differently. But you understand that. Now, the difference was the offensive line, usually you get a little bit more help because you'll have a tight end coming down, a running back chip. With the way USC's playing defense, those cornerbacks don't have help.
Yeah.
But they're up to the task. They can be up to the task at least. They haven't been consistent with it. Isaac Taylor-Stewart, people really trashed him after that Stanford game, and he didn't play well in the Stanford game. He's been their best cornerback, and he's been really good, actually. Outside of that Stanford game, he's given up a handful of catches at best. The completion percentage against him is under 50% outside that Stanford game. But you can't have just one cornerback do it. You got to have both guys do it. And then when your reserves come in there and you're trusting Joshua Jackson and Jaden Williams, they got to continue to make plays too. Jaden Williams has been really good this season, but you give up a big play there, and suddenly that gives them some momentum, and that's college football. You get a little bit of one big play can spark something special, and I think that happened for Utah. That gave them confidence, especially after everything they'd gone through. They were like, okay, this is it. Let's go. We can do this against USC, and they did.
Mm-hmm.
A little, I don't know if it's a hot take or whatever, but real quick, Keely. Football, I mean, at the core, the fundamentals, it's a blocking and tackling kind of sport. And it's great that Dante Williams comes in and tries to, add more responsibility for people, keep people accountable, try to ratchet up the physicality of practice, having an extra day of pads. But this is still a byproduct of 6 or 7 years of Clay Helton running the team. And it's, I had a source from one of the USC's opponent tell me in the Coliseum tunnel, like, they were soft. And I feel like that's all I can come back to is like, yeah, they could have tackled better here. They could have made a better play here. They could play in the red zone a little bit better here. But to me, this is more about, this is a pretty soft team. And I don't think it's something, if Dante Williams was the best interim coach in the world, I don't think this would be something he would be able to fix until the offseason, until you kind of had a whole offseason of how you want to structure strength and conditioning and offseason workouts and all of that. I feel like this is sort of just going to be a product of what you've already seen, that it's just not going to be that tough of a team. And not saying that the players aren't capable of it or the coaches aren't capable of it, but that's just not what the mentality has been. It's not a switch that you can just flip and now we're physical. Now we're going to go around and we've seen 3 times that they've got their butts whooped in the Coliseum by guys that definitely weren't ranked as high in the rankings as they were. But the other team, if you just look at it, you didn't know anything about football or what the rules are, you're like, that team looks like it's pushing this team around. And that's what's, to me, the fundamental core of what's going on here. So, I mean, I'm not, I don't think this is on Dante Williams. I think this is just way that the program has been built. And that's why you have to tear it down to the studs and start again. And, I thought there's enough talent here that Dante Williams could get this team to go through and win a bunch of games. But the way it started, I'm not very optimistic for the second half of the season, because this is, you could get in a roll early on against some of the weaker opponents on your schedule. Now you're going to have to get on a roll against some of the tougher opponents on the schedule. And that's a tall task. Not that they can't do it, but it's a tall order right now. And maybe they can do a little bit in the bye week. But to me, this is just more about fundamentally how this team is built. They're just a team that's getting pushed around.
Yeah, the analogy that popped into my head last night was that, it's like when you have a really bad cold, you get over the threshold, and that was firing Clay Helton, but you still have the lingering effects where you're not 100% healthy yet. You go to the grocery store and you're like, that kind of I overdid it there.
Yeah.
That's kind of the symptoms that you're still.
Yeah.
That's the symptoms you're seeing from the Clay Helton era. It's not going to be fixed, like you said, Ryan, just because you made that fire. It's going to have to be a rebuild in that sense.
Yeah, and I've heard some announcers say you can make some tweaks here. Like, no, this is no tweaks. This is, what's the implosion thing where they just blow up the building and it just kind of collapses on itself and just clear out the debris and start again. That's what you have to do. It's unfortunate. It's a proud program. There's a lot of history and stuff, but it really was it was run into the ground. You can't have 3 losses like this in a row. That's unbelievable. I don't think Paul Hackett that would have happened to him. This is just crazy of what we've seen from USC.
And we're seeing that from USC alumni. The football players on social media, they're kind of speechless at what they're seeing, because at least the USC teams, when they were bad, it would be close losses. I don't think they're used to seeing just blowouts at home.
Yeah, Oregon State hadn't won in the Coliseum in 71 years. Is that correct?
61.
61 years? Oh, I'm sorry. Off a decade. Utah hadn't won in Los Angeles since the Coliseum was built in 1932 or 23 or whatever it was. Yeah, I think 1923, yes. That's a long time. So to have 2 of those records be broken in, 2 weeks, that's not USC football for sure. And I'm not going to look at this tape and go, oh yeah, like they need a better red zone percentage and then they'd be fine. Like, no, like this is just more about what are you coming out there and doing? Like, this isn't some little tweak. This is something that's a big problem. And the problem is you've seen it week after week after week. And Dante Williams, to his credit, was trying to make a change, saying, hey, we got to make this like a business trip. We're going to change our pregame ritual stuff on Fridays, and we're going to go do a walkthrough at a high school. And I get, like, I like that. I applaud that. Try to mix things up. It had zero effect. It didn't change anything. So there's some other big things that need to be changed, and maybe they can't be over the course of a week of practice trying to get ready for a game.
USC, what have they done so much since Pete Carroll? They've relied on their talent.
Yes.
They don't have as much talent now.
That's also true.
Like, Kanai Malga is a great complementary linebacker. You know, if he's not if you have a 5-star guy beside him, he's the guy that's going to do all the dirty work and, you know, get in there and thump some guys. He shouldn't be your star linebacker, though. You know, and that's the issue. Like, up the middle right there, they're having issues with their linebackers and not having the nose tackle, and, you know, Jacob Lichtenstein playing at defensive tackle, and he's more of a defensive end body. There's issues, and we've seen on the offensive line, same thing. You know, if you have, even if it's Zach Banner, if you have a big body guy like that, and you just push and, you know, work on people, and that's what actually Utah did, because they had a kid on there that came in. I can't pronounce his name off the top of my head, but he was like 6'8" and 330 pounds. He reminded me of Zach Banner. He just leaned on people, lean on them. USC doesn't have that right now. You know, it's these lean bodies, and, you know, well, they're supposed to be athletic. Well, to get out and, you know, do some outside zone stuff. But USC doesn't do a great job of getting to the second level with their blocks on the offensive line or on the outside, the tight ends or the wide receivers. There was that one play where Drake London, they tossed it out to him for a screen and was nearly picked off, nearly a pick six. Michael Trigg watches the guy almost make the pick six, and then he turns and watches the guy trying to make a tackle, and he didn't block it. When that happens, that guy goes flying for it. He takes that chance, that risk there. Once Drake London catches it, if you get a block right there, that's a huge play potentially.
Yeah.
You know, 15, 20 yards. Instead, it's a 7 or 8 yard. And that's the case with USC too often right now, is their successful plays aren't as successful as they could be because they're missing that one block. You know, they're missing this or they're missing that. And that's the details that everyone keeps talking about, but those details aren't being fixed. They're saying, oh, that's a detail and we got to fix that. And maybe they fix this one detail, but there's another one and another one that they let slide up. So in part of that is because they aren't as talented as they previously could be. So they can't just make up for it with talent like they have been able to do in the past. And I think that is part of it. They are just not as talented of a team, a program right now as they were a few years ago. You know, even when it was, you know, similar issues, the penalties and all those type things, they could play through it because they had more stars and more talent on the roster.
Yeah, like for Kanai Malga, great, but like you had an Oscar Lua back in the day, but you also had the Ray Malaluga coming in, and like that may be like the Palaie Noatote, who's no longer with the team, but you had that like 5-star guy that maybe there was a veteran that's been around a long time and is capable of making plays, but you also have the guy that's going to take somebody's head off and is the recruit that everybody wanted. There's less of those guys. I still think it's a talented roster. But there's a lot of problems with this team as we're seeing.
I mean, similar, since we're talking about linebackers, the class that Cameron Smith came in with. You know, he wasn't the highly the vaunted guy in that group, you know, because they had Porter Gustin, you had Osa Messina, and there was one more that I'm blanking on right now off the top of my head.
Oh, yeah.
But there were three guys that were in 5-star contention. John Houston.
John Houston, yeah.
You know, he's a 5-star. The other two guys, you know, were 5 stars depending on, you know, composite versus, you know, 24/7. Cameron Smith was the lowest one, but he was the guy that did everything.
Yeah.
And then you can put Porter Augustin on the edge, and, you know, so that's the difference is, you know, they're relying on the guy that would be Cameron Smith was the 4th-rated guy in that class, that linebacker class. And he became the playmaker. They're relying on, you know, the guy that's way on the bottom to be their playmaker right now. So it's not – they just don't have the same talent that they did before, and I think that's part of the issue, that they're still having the same issues, but they don't have as much talent now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're relying on the talent, but it's not as strong. And that's certainly – but you shouldn't be relying on the talent. But when you had ridiculous talent, you could rely on it and still be pretty good. And now you can't, I guess.
Yeah.
That's a good summary.
I'm going to jump back into some of the news we got tonight. We got to talk to Dante Williams. He said that basically Michael Trigg's first MRI was inconclusive. They do know that it's not a broken bone and it's not an ACL tear, but they don't know anything further than that. He's going to get a second MRI, so once they know, we'll be updated and be sure to update you guys. Shotgun, I know that obviously affected the team to see a guy like Trigg. I mean, we've talked about it on shows and on podcasts how much the team just loves Trigg. You got to talk to Malcolm Epps about not only his first touchdown as a Trojan, but just seeing his little brother, if you will, go down like that. What do you have to say?
Yeah, he said that touchdown was for Trigg. He said that when he scored, that wasn't his touchdown. That was for Trigg, and he said that he talked to him a little bit afterwards. Corey Foreman, I talked to him and asked him the same thing, and he said, when Trigg came back to the sideline, he said that that they're going to be there for him and everything. It looked like a very bad injury. The positive news, it sounds like, from what Dante Williams told us, and again, take a little bit of grain of salt with what Dante Williams tells us as far as injuries. He's been, pretty coy with it, but he said it's not an ACL, so that's huge news. Now, it could still be an MCL, it could be meniscus, could be anything else, but the fact that it's not an ACL, when you first saw it, and I mentioned this to Ryan earlier, and Keely didn't know what I was talking about, but you thought, that could be a Willis McGahee type injury, where he just tore everything up in his knee, similar to the UCF quarterback that's now at Florida State, McKenzie Milton, where there could be serious damage to other things besides just the ligament. So that's positive news, I think, for USC. Obviously, inconclusive. They still got stuff to do. And, again, that could, since it was inconclusive, it could still come back as an ACL, I would guess. But Dante Williams said it's not that. So we're going to go with that as positive news and, hope that everything turns out well for him. We had a couple questions about who gets his reps. I think Epps is, the guy that gets those split-out reps.
He caught a touchdown. So.
Yeah, and they need him to be able to produce more consistently. He did have a ball that he could have caught that went off his hands, that went over the DB, but he's a big target, and that's what it was on that one play. Keaton Slovis rolls out, and it's like, hey, let's find the big guy. And same thing on the two-point conversion. He just threw it up, and there was 3 defenders around him. It's two-point conversion. It's all or nothing anyways, so let's throw it to the 6'6" guy and see him go up and get it, and that's what Epps did on that play. So we'll be interesting to see if he can continue to get to progress in because remember, he missed all that time in fall camp, so he's still learning and getting used to the system and everything as well.
Alrighty, I'm going to jump into some callers. Our queue is full, and then I'll get into some questions after that. Let's go to our first caller on the line. It is John from Glendora. Hello, you are live on television.
All right, guys, Brian's not going to roast me tonight because I think we're going to agree on this one. That team last night, or Saturday, we saw them get rolled over. I'm tired of going to games and seeing players give up. That is not USC football. I'm so disappointed. Nothing on Dante. He's doing the best he can with the situation he has. But this is the administration's fault for hanging on to Clay too long. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the question. It's funny. He calls in. I think I agree with him most of the time. I might have roasted him once, and then
maybe that's his shtick. That's how we
remember.
A little
PTSD from a roasting. I'm sorry. I can get a little mean. I'm sorry.
He roasts a lot of people. It's like a Ryan badge of honor.
I just like roast. Whatever. So here's that. I mean, it's a debate, and we see this on the Peristyle on USCFootball.com, the message board. Hopefully, you guys are jumping on there. And remember having conversations when Mike Bone and Brandon Sosnick came in, and finding out the reasons why that they weren't going to get rid of Clay Helton at the time. And it was pretty baffling just to know how bad, not just Pat Hayden, but then Lynn Swann screwed this up by giving him the extension and all that stuff. And I think at that point, you have to make a choice where the university is going through horrible horrible scandals and lawsuits and all the stuff. And that's a lot of money. It's not athletic to budget money. But then you have to you have a coach that's not getting anyone in trouble. He's just losing. The fans hate him. And you have a new president, and they're like, you could see why the thought would be, hey, we just got to keep him around for a while. Just a couple years, it'll be fine. Well, then the pandemic hits, and then it's like, then you can't get rid of him then. And then you have to get rid of him 2 games into a season, and now you've pretty much thrown away another season. I'd be curious to go back and if Mike Bone and Brandon Sosnick could, knowing what they know now, if they would have made the firing. And my guess would be, I got the reasons for not firing Clay Helton at the time, but the way, if you didn't know a pandemic was coming, and who knows, a new coach, and they will also say they weren't ready to bring in a new coach. They needed to get everything else around the football program ready too. But I think you could have done that in conjunction with bringing in a new coach, and maybe that coach would be part of it. So I'd be curious to see. I mean, sometimes you make a big decision like that, and you just stand by it, and yeah, maybe they would. But I think, I think I said this at the time many times, like, I get the reasons why. You still need to pull the trigger. You still need to fire and figure out a way. The way this is shaping out, I think that was probably still the correct move. So I have no problem with the fans doing it. Just understand that the athletic department had reasons, and they were good reasons, but they weren't necessarily there was still a debate, I would think. And, I don't know. To me, that wasn't. You should have got rid of them when you could, because now it's just like a mess.
It's easy to spend somebody else's money.
True. Yeah, I love that. Come on.
So, I mean, the talk of how much it would cost to buy everyone out, plus hire a new staff, and to hire a name that, would bring the cachet that you're looking for, ton of money.
It was going to be a ton.
So, it's easy to say, yeah, they definitely should have done that. But
knowing how much money you're losing now, it probably would have still been the better
risk,
pocketbook,
true
decision.
But those type of moves come from boosters paying the buyouts and stuff. So were those lined up? Did they try to get it done? Who knows? So, that's the hard part of it. We're seeing the results of it.
Yeah.
So there's no debate about whether it was the right move or not. Now, if you could have done it, you should have done it.
Yes. Okay.
And that's obvious. They're in this place they are because of what happened in 2019 and also in 2017. The extension and then not firing in 2019, you're just getting the residuals of it now.
Yeah.
And, it's going to take someone to come in. And the unfortunate thing is it looks more and more likely like it's not a quick fix.
Yeah.
I still have optimism that can be a quicker fix than most, but I know some fans are just like, it's going to take a generation to get back. Like, I don't buy that.
Not a generation, but maybe like 2 years, because you have to get talent at those positions where they're in need. And how quickly can they do it? And depending on when you can hire a coach, can you do that in this recruiting class?
Yeah.
Because if not, now that's another year where you're waiting. Now it's going to be 2 more years. Now maybe Rajon Davis is a guy, and Julian Simon is a guy in the linebacker, and maybe Max Gibbs stays on the defensive side. Maybe you pull in a true freshman. Maybe there's those opportunities, and they can be a little bit of a stopgap. But what happens when you get one injury? What happens when you get 2 injuries? And suddenly what happens when you have a senior that you were expecting to be able to play, or a highly touted freshman, and those guys aren't available, like Solomon Tulialapupu and Jordan Iosefa? Those could be USC's linebackers right now, but injuries happen. So, how long will it take? That's going to be a big question, I think, and it could be longer than people think.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our next caller in the queue. I believe is Andrew from San Diego. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey guys, love the show. Thanks for doing it. I just have a 2-part question. Number 1, what's the easier fix, offense or defense? And then do you guys think the results would be different if Clay Helton was still the head coach? Thank you. Have a great night.
Andrew, good questions. Yeah, see, for me, I think you can fix the offense when you've got, Jackson Dart or Miller Moss, right? Are you talking about this season or maybe for the future?
He's talking about this season.
Yeah, so you got Keaton Slovis, you got Drake London, you got Keontae Ingram. I think the offense, you can do some stuff. USC in their 3 losses at home scored 28 against Stanford, 27 against Oregon State, and 26 against Utah. And that's having been down 29 against Stanford in the fourth quarter, 25 against Oregon State in the fourth quarter, 25 against Utah in the fourth quarter. They basically scored as many points as they were down by in these games and late in the game. And this is too talented of an offense to score 25 points, 26. That doesn't make much sense to me. I think you can fix the offense faster, but I don't know. What do you think?
You would think so.
It hasn't happened.
I think there's been some positive steps on the offensive line from when Clay McGuire was hired. Obviously, did not play well in that second half. But I don't know that they're going to make those changes because they could have already done it. And they could correct those small things already. It seems like they could. The biggest thing for me is there are positives in the first quarter, it seems like every game. But you get to the third quarter, oh crap! Here comes the other team, and those 3 losses. I think the stat you tweeted was it's 42-3. USC has been outscored in the third quarter of those 3 losses at home.
Jordan Moore said that on the radio broadcast. So against Stanford, Oregon State, and Utah, once the third quarter rolls around, and remember, USC had a great third quarter against Washington State. 42-3, they've been outscored in the third quarter in those games. That's where you're down already, and then you just that's where your losing turns to blowout.
Yeah, USC was up 10-7, and Utah scored 28 points, 28 unanswered points in a span of 10 minutes of game time.
Yeah.
Over between the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 6 minutes of the second half. I mean, that you're never going to win a game and you get 28 straight points in 10 minutes. Maybe if you're in Texas, Oklahoma, 52, 51 type of
crazy.
Ole Miss, Arkansas type of games, maybe. But that's the thing. They're not making – and then Dante Williams was asked about it today, the third quarter issues, and he said, we've got to make better adjustments, and everyone's got to do something a little bit better. That's all true, but it starts with the coordinators.
Yeah, that wasn't a great answer for me. Keely,
Yes.
you answer this part.
What's up?
The second part. Clay Helton, if he's still the head coach, is the record the same?
I was thinking about that. I was actually thinking, do you think USC comes back against Wazoo if Clay Helton's still the head coach?
That's exactly what I thought. Like, it could be, like, I think the record's the same or maybe worse.
I don't fully I can't predict that because I do think this team was able to fight to a certain extent under Clay Helton. There was something that he was able to do, but would it be this bad in this season where the players know the writing's on the wall? You know what I mean? I don't know at this point.
I mean, USC was down 29 to Stanford in the fourth quarter. Like, holy cow. Like, that is, like, I don't think Clay Helton's fixing that. You know?
That they were favored by
17 over.
Of course he's not fixing it. He was the coach.
Oh, yeah, he was the coach then. Duh. He didn't fix that. But
Hey.
then they bounced back against Washington State. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure they do.
And the thing is, they have fought for Clay Helton previous years, but this year the one opportunity we saw that didn't happen. And I think that's more possibly a symptom of this team and just the culture that this team has as a whole.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that Dante Williams and that staff are trying to fight against. And he was asked about it today. How do you keep the players from, just basically shutting it off? And that's an interesting question. How do you not lose the players when everyone knows you're the interim, everyone that's on the staff, maybe 2 people get kept, most of the staff is going to be gone. If you're a player, do you listen to those people? And that's very difficult. And the one thing is Dante, and he mentioned this, and he didn't say exactly this, but he has respect to the players. The players respect him, and as long as he holds that respect, then I think they'll still play for him. But that's a dangerous situation, and that's why you see some interim jobs. Usually when someone takes over as interim, it goes one of 2 ways, up or down, because you either fight for that person, everyone rallies, or it's like, we know this guy's not going to be here. Why am I listening to this person? I'm going to make sure that I'm 100% healthy. I'm not playing through anything, all those type of things that you need players to do.
Well, this is the discussion Shotgun and I had last night when we were walking around the Coliseum. I was saying, is this just the product of having a week 3 firing, and these players aren't really tethered to anything? You know what I mean? There's no anchor point to rally around. And yes, they respect Dante Williams, but like Shotgun just pointed out, at the end of the day, they kind of know where this is all headed, right?
I think you have to look at what are the motivating factors, and if you're a coach, I think obviously you're coaching for your job. Now, if you think at this point you're like, we're all getting fired, it doesn't matter, it's still building your resume for whatever the next job is going to be. And for the players, you want to get, Drake London could set records. They pulled him out of the game when he could have set the single game catch record. He was 1 away, which was weird that they would pull him out there. But I thought they should have pulled that about everyone. Are players is it Drake London who's could win the Biletnikoff? He could be represented USC for the Heisman Trophy ceremony if he keeps going the way he's going. And I got probably too many losses for that to happen, but he can win some postseason awards. Does he want to shut things down? Do any players say what, this just isn't going in the right direction? If you lose to Notre Dame, maybe it's a blowout fashion. You're under 500. Dante Williams runs the risk of. There could be a risk of players just saying, you know what, I'm out, and then things really start to spiral out of control. So you could lose it at this point.
It won't necessarily be like an opt-out like it was last year with COVID and everything, and be like, or some of the players that opt out for the draft. Not necessarily like that. But
for the bowl games, we've seen players do that. You just opt out for the rest of the year, like, yeah, I'm going to shut it down.
Players aren't going to opt out for the rest of the year. They might have a nagging injury, though. My ankle is still bothering me, Coach.
Yeah. I'm going to go play video games.
Are you going to push through those things? And that's the hard thing for a coaching staff that, they there's no bite behind it.
Yeah.
They don't have any teeth.
You're not going to play next year. Oh, guess what? You're not going to be here. So, I would not blame any. If a player doesn't want to play, like, I have no problem with that. Like, this has been a weird.
I have a problem.
There would be a weird season. Like, your coach gets fired game 2. You're losing games. If you want to protect yourself and just want to kind of wait and reset and stuff, I got no problem with that.
Are you going to the university just to get an education, or are you going to be a football player and hopefully that becomes your career? Because if you want to be in the NFL, then you better be putting the tape on right now too. When things are bad, that's when the NFL wants to see, because you get drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars, you're going to say, I'm opting out this year until you guys get better.
Well, you're getting paid then, so.
They're getting paid right now.
Well, not really.
They get a stipend and they can be NIL, but you don't get any NIL if you're opting out. Promise you that.
Yeah.
So just to be clear here, Ryan, are you advocating or at least saying it's okay for players to basically quit on the season? I want to make sure your point is clear because that's what it sounds like you're suggesting.
No, I'm not advocating for that.
Okay,
I'm
sure.
saying if a player said, you know what, like, I got a chance to be drafted, I don't feel like I'm put in a safe situations out there. We just don't, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want, injuries are just freak stuff. But if you don't feel like, there's just too many cooks, there's just not sure what's going on. I don't feel like this is the right thing for me. I'm going to sit the rest of the season out, nagging injury or whatever it is. I wouldn't say, oh, you're a quitter or whatever. Like this, the adults failed these kids, right? Like there's a lot of adults that made a lot of bad decisions over the last several years that put USC in this position right now. It's not the kids' fault. It's the adults that were supposed to be taking care of these guys, from the athletic directors that were making wrong decisions and all that. There's been a lot of that stuff. So if a player's like, you know what? I think it would be great when you get a new coach in and there's a whole new culture and new stuff going on. Cool. But I don't want to do this. There's 6 more games. I'm out for this one. I just wouldn't say, okay, you're a terrible player or that's bad that you're quitting on the team. I just wouldn't say that.
I just don't think that's a realistic situation.
What do you mean?
I just don't think a player would quit like that.
We've seen
Or
players
collectively.
we've seen players. I'm not saying like this would be a team-wide thing. I'm just like, we've seen players opt out of bowl games. So they're like, yeah, it's not a great bowl game. So basically, it's like there's not going to be. What am I going to get out of playing in this bowl game? Like, I'm going to go play in the Liberty Bowl or something, and I'd rather just go get ready for the NFL draft. Well, if you're like, hey, we're 3-3, just lost to Notre Dame, we're not going to make the championship game. I just feel like I'm putting myself out there to be a pincushion. Like, I'm going to opt out for the last 5 games. Like, if a player's going to say that, I don't see that big of a difference between opting out for a bowl game. But that's just me. I don't know. I try to be on the player side.
Alrighty, let's jump into another caller in the queue.
I think that says a lot about your character if that's what you do.
Let's go to Cameron from San Francisco, I believe. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey, Ryan, Keely, Shotgun, Cameron from Frisco, Texas, not San Francisco.
My bad.
Sorry, No worries. So I got 2 really quick questions. One of them, Ryan kind of mentioned it about, postseason bowl eligibility. So basically, will USC be bowl eligible by the end of the season? Where will USC get 3 wins possible to become bowl eligible to get at least 6 wins? Because since we're already halfway through the season, 3-3, where are we going to get at least 6 wins? And then my second question is after Week 6's matchups with all these college football teams, which coaches can we eliminate from the coaching carousel for USC's possible head coach? My thoughts, Kalani Sitake from BYU, with their really undisciplined, turnover-heavy game over Boise State where they lost at home. So, and also since Kalani Sitake just signed an extension back in August with BYU, I don't think he's ever going to be leaving there. He loves BYU, loves the fans, loves the university, loves the football team. I don't think he's leaving anytime soon.
Thanks, Cameron, for the call.
Cameron.
One of the things, this is not roasting you, Cameron, but this is one of the pet peeves I sort of have when people, and we get this on the peristyle all the time. James Franklin's a candidate. Like, he just lost the game. He's out. It's like BYU lost. Like, most teams kept everyone this year. Like, everyone came back. BYU lost a ton, and they came out and they beat a bunch of good teams. They're 3-0 in the Pac-12. They lose 1 game at home. Yeah, they had a clunker, against Boise State. I don't eliminate him from contention because they had 1 bad game. So just looking at a coach like, oh, he lost the game, he shouldn't coach at USC. Like, it's just too, you got to look at the whole resume. Do you like his whole resume? The 1 game he had that there was a clunker, I'm not going to eliminate him from contention for doing that.
Because James Franklin lost to Clay Helton?
That's the reason why you shouldn't look at James. No, that bugs me. As far as bowl eligibility, I don't know if you want to assume that USC doesn't get a win against Notre Dame on the road. They've been better on the road. Maybe they do. But the last 5 games, you have Arizona, who's on a 16 or 17 game losing streak. They haven't won a game in over 2 calendar years. At Arizona State, who looks really good. At Cal, who looks bad. UCLA, who
looks really good and then really bad.
True, which a lot of these teams are. And then BYU at home. So, I mean, I could see USC winning 4 of those games potentially, but I could see them losing 4 of them pretty easy. I think if you lose to Arizona at home, that's a major problem. Like that's you got to get a win in the Coliseum against Arizona. Like
if that happens, Ryan, I'm done for the rest of the year.
Yeah, we're gonna all hit the transfer portal.
I'm sitting down the rest of the year. It's just not safe environment for me anymore.
Yeah,
our mentions will not be safe. That's for sure.
True. Yeah, you don't get paid. That's fine. We're with that.
Wait, I thought you said it was fine for the players.
That's for them. Like they signed a year scholarship. You're month to month, baby. We're gonna get you out of here. So at Cal's not they're just so bad. Like their defense is worse. I think you have 2 pretty sure wins, and then you just have to win 1 more. So it's not going to be super easy.
That's the thing. I said this last week, but I don't know what the standard is for this team. I can't predict because you don't know which team you're going to get each week.
I didn't even, to be fair, I didn't even think about bowl eligibility. Before going into this game, I was like, man, it'll be so cool to go see the first Pac-12 championship game in Las Vegas. This is going to be awesome. I really had thoughts of, oh yeah, and obviously that's gone. I might go anyway just to cover it, but not because USC is going to be there. But I think it was Peter Arbogast that mentioned it on the radio broadcast, in the 3rd or 4th quarter, about bowl eligibility, and I'm like, oh my God, that's true. This team might not make a bowl game. Holy, that was not something I was thinking of.
Shotgun, your thoughts?
It's not going to be easy, but I think they will get those 3 wins.
Yeah.
Arizona and Cal, I think, are 2 that they definitely should win. And Arizona, if they don't win, the whole.
I mean, USC almost lost to Arizona last year, and they're that was when they had 11 game losing streak.
But it's at home. It's homecoming. They better win at home.
They should win that one. Yeah.
Alrighty, I'm gonna put us into rapid fire for callers because we still have callers.
We
in
do?
the queue.
Okay.
Yes, we do. Our next one is Dr. K, who called in last week. Hello, you're live on Tunnel Vision.
Hi, it's Dr. K, Salt Lake City. I have a comment and then I have a question specifically for Ryan. We've been USC fans since our son went to USC from 2010 to 2014. We've enjoyed the show ever since. We've seen Utah run so many trick plays that have literally and always confused USC, especially when they played here in Utah. And that's because of Whittingham. And he was very well prepared at all of USC's weaknesses. What was interesting in watching the game that the producer, obviously, at Fox, had more shots of Orlando during the confused defense all the time. He was just outcoached as he was with Oregon State and Stanford. Now, here's my question for Ryan. Ryan, I'd like to know where you were from 1996 to 2001 when all the observers and everybody were basically saying that USC's football days were, their national dominance were fading. The football team's record at that time was 37-35, second worst over any 5-year span in history, second to only a 500 record in 56-61. Where were you? What were you doing? And what was it like during that period of time? We had a friend who went to school at that time and just said they had a lousy team.
Thanks, Dr. K, for that one. So I just graduated with my master's from USC, and I was working. That's when I started the website. So 1996 is when I really started USCfootball.com. I bought the domain name in 97. I think the John Robinson era had come to an end. Now, there was still some fun stuff. The Rose Bowl, they came off a Cotton Bowl win with Keyshawn Johnson. So there were some fun kind of times heading into there. But you were in the midst of 2 streaks with UCLA and Notre Dame. You weren't beating your rivals. So, yeah, there were some problems. And then, of course, the Paul Hackett, when that started, He was just not very popular. And as the site was gaining popularity, USCFootball.com, the university, Paul Hackett didn't like there was the internet thing. He was like, there's the internet thing. The people are like talking, crap about me and saying bad things about me. Like I met with their lawyers, like literally met with the general counsel at USC about the domain name they were looking at, but they didn't really have a leg to stand on. But that was because Paul Hackett didn't like that there was, people talking about their football team like that. So, but it was, obviously you came through it okay with Pete Carroll, but it was definitely an interesting time. There was some fun stuff early on with the J-Rob, and then after that it was pretty crappy. But then you had some stud players like Troy Polamalu and Carson Palmer, but they just weren't kind of, that streak to Oregon State ended, I believe, like in 2000 or whatever it was. That was like the Jonathan Smith quarterback team and they had Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco, they had Hushman Zada. Yeah, like they had that team beat the crap out of Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl. That was like 60-something years, I think, in Oregon State. I forget what it was. There was some long streak. So there was definitely some lean times, but there were still some like good moments with some great players. And then obviously things got a lot better with Pete Carroll.
Forgive my ignorance, Ryan, but what was Paul Hackett's recruiting ability?
He was an NFL guy. He was known for like having like a man cave in his basement with like a jukebox and stuff. It was just sort of like there was more hands-off kind of things. Like they still would get players. Like they got some guys, but not. He just was not a dynamic recruiter. He wasn't a great. I didn't think he related to the players all that well overall.
Got it. Interesting. Alrighty, we have two more in the queue, and then I'm getting into other questions. Let's
Okay.
run through these. I believe our next caller is Kyler from Pennsylvania. Hello, you're live on television.
Yes. My question is, with all the problems USC is having right now, would it be more suitable for an NFL assistant, head coach, or a college coach?
Thanks, Kyle. 100% college coach for me. Like someone that's been there and done that. Like I don't want someone that's never run a program before to take a program that's basically been beaten up and have to build it up, because you're going to be learning on the job. I'd rather have someone that's done it before, who's built the program up, and they know, what, when I did this, I thought that was cool, but that didn't work. So we're going to do this instead. Where if you bring in an offensive coordinator or something, or defensive coordinator from the NFL, they probably have some ideas. Some are good and some won't work. And USC's hired way too many people that are learning on the job. Like, stop hiring people that are learning on the job. Hire someone that's done the job. That's where I think USC has to go.
Yeah, I think that's the correct answer. I think it's much easier to bring in someone from the pro ranks, because I cover college baseball. This happens a little bit more often. I think it's easier to do that when your head coach goes somewhere else, rather than like you're in lean years.
Yeah.
Whether it's your coach retires or, just takes a different job or whatever it may be. I think that's much easier to say, our program's going fine right now. Let's go out of the box a little bit and make a different hire. Let's go to the pro ranks and get somebody, and then you can keep on a couple of assistants that know the college recruiting, know the ins and outs of the NCAA and stuff like that. Whereas you have to learn all that if you're if you're an NFL assistant coming in. So how many assistants would you keep around then? And like right now, you're looking at it like, do you want to keep any USC's assistants around with how much they're struggling in different areas? So I think all of that would go into it. It's much easier to have a college head coach that is winning, and not a college assistant, but a college head coach.
Yes.
I mean, if you just get Nick Saban, I think that makes it easier.
Yeah, why not? He lost.
That's
funny.
He lost. He's off the list. He's off the list.
There was a funny post on the Peristyle, like, eliminate Saban, because he lost the game. It was just like, that's pretty good.
He lost to an assistant, one of his former assistants for the first time.
Yep. All right, let's go to our last caller in the queue. I believe it is Joe from DC. Hello, you're live on Tunnelvision.
Hello, everybody. Hey, what's wrong with a jukebox in the basement? But anyway, you guys at the practices, honestly, is it sort of like dead team, dead coaches walking, or is there enthusiasm and they're trying to right this ship?
That's a great question. I mean, from what we're seeing out there, and we get to see most of or all of Tuesday, part of Wednesday. So that's it. So it's only a couple of days a week, but there's some fire. It's not like they're not They're not just going out there having ice cream and walking around and not doing anything. I mean, they're practicing, but I just feel like the foundation of what they're practicing upon is what the problem is. It's not like they're going out there not doing anything.
I don't know. Last week, that's part of the reason why I picked Utah is I didn't feel great about how USC practiced last week.
Yeah.
Part of Dante Williams had to call the team out on Wednesday when they tried to break the huddle from doing stretches, called them back up and said that they were flat and that they needed to get their act together. And that did change the momentum of that practice, I believe. But just overall, and part of it is it's a little bit low energy right now because they've installed a lot of stuff the last 2 weeks, and that's part of trying to be more creative on offense and doing a pop pass to Drake London and trying some different things like that. That means that creates a lower energy practice because it's a lot of teaching, it's a lot of walking through the play.
Yeah.
Here's where you line up here, and that all takes time versus being able to have competition periods and the one-on-ones and hey, we have more time to do this. So I think that was part of it. But, yeah, I wasn't very excited about the way USC practiced last week necessarily. So I came away, and that's part of the reason why I picked Utah, to at least keep it within the spread, and I actually thought that they would win.
Nice.
Interesting. Good job, Shotgun. Alrighty, thanks for all the calls. Let's go through some rapid-fire questions
We'll do rapid
now.
fire.
First one is from Cam, who said, who needs to have themselves a game in order for USC to stay competitive in South Bend?
Ooh. I've got to go with someone on the defensive side. I mean, I think someone like a Tuli Tuipulotu, if he has a huge game, that's probably good for USC. I don't know. So I think it would be someone on the defensive side. Like, Drake London's going to get his and all that stuff, but I think a lot of people would need one. But I'll go with someone like if you got a defensive lineman that has a great game, you're probably going to do all right.
I'll expand it a little bit and give one on both sides of the ball.
Okay.
Keontae Ingram on the offensive side, or one of the running backs. That means the run game's going. That means it's a balanced attack more.
But it's been going. And
it's been going, and then they've said, well, we don't want to do that in the third and fourth quarters.
Yeah.
And have they been closer in the first halves or second halves?
No, in the first half for sure. But.
So keep running the ball. So if he goes off for 150, that means they've been running the ball well, and that takes a little bit of pressure off. We saw in the Colorado game. Now, granted, it's Colorado and they stink, but it takes the pressure off Drake London because now you're balancing the box versus putting extra guys out there. On the defensive side, if Isaiah Polamau has a big game, I think that changes the impact of the defense. He's kind of been non-existent this year. And, he's a two-time captain, a guy that's made some interceptions in the past. If it makes one of those plays that you would expect from the safety on the other side, Kyle Hamilton, who's one of the best players in the country. If you see him making a rangy play going to intercept in the pass, I think that's the type of game-changing play that the defense needs, more so than one of the defensive linemen having a good game, which could really benefit them as well because more pressure on the quarterback again. But, he's a guy that we haven't seen a bunch of big plays from this year, but we have in the past. So if he can get on track, I think that it would be really good for the defense.
We got a question from Alan on Facebook who said, it's a question for Shotgun. Is Graham Harrell's offense as predictable as some fans think it is, or is it more on the players?
Both. It gets bogged down and gets very predictable at times. I mean, I believe, now I couldn't confirm this. I was listening, and it sounded like they were calling out USC's plays at times in that Utah game. And that's something we had heard from
before,
that Stanford had done. And that's why USC is using the screens now. Now, I don't know if they were calling out the specific audibles that Keaton Slovis was making and that they were motioning in. I think that was actually what was happening more so than the entire play, because you can have a play and change one route, as a quarterback to a receiver. But I think that's what they were doing, and that's a concern. If they know your signals, how can you flip the switch? If they know your plays, how can you change that up? I think that's part of it. But I also think that they don't have the same type of talent on the outside that they have in the past. And, so you can throw that jump ball, not just to Drake London, but also to the other side where Taj Washington is, and you throw that ball high like Keaton Slovis did when he was rolling out, and it was nearly an interception. Whereas if your number 2 receiver was Drake London or number 3 receiver, Drake London, when you throw that ball at Arizona State a couple years ago, and he goes up and snatches it away from Ashari Crosswell, should have been an interception instead, picks up a first down and sets up a field goal. That's the difference. And not to say that Taj Washington can't do some unique things in the offense, but they don't have the same talent level on the outside as they've had in the past.
Mm-hmm. Rapid fire.
We got a question on Facebook from DD Diego, I believe it's YouTube, who said, how many years will it take for a new coach to get USC to the CFP?
What do you think?
I mean, it depends on the coach, but say you get an upper echelon coach that does everything right. I think that the soonest, I think you're looking at probably like 4 years, but the soonest would be potentially in year 2. That would be everything goes right.
Everything goes right.
Injuries, your
Back
quarterback, just everything kind of goes correct. You get a coach in soon, and he's able to kill this recruiting class as well, which whenever they get a coach in, the recruiting class will get a big boost. Someone asked about, to answer a different question, someone asked about the recruiting class, is it going to be worse than 2020? And no, that's not going to be the case, because once you get a new head coach, just that infusion of energy and, what could be usually helps out a lot.
Yeah, that's what the next question I was going to ask. Kenneth wanted to know, do you think recruits will be deterred by the season, or do you think they realize the situation with no head coach and will still take a serious look at SC and want to help change the program?
I mean, I think they would be deterred, but I think when you get a new head coach in, it's like, oh, what can this guy do? This guy's coming from whatever program. Look what he did there. Look what he did with this position. That could be me. And I think you get that boost of energy then.
We got a question from Jasper Smith, who said, why on earth didn't the quarters jam the Utah receivers when they were man-to-man at the line of scrimmage? They let the guys run undeterred with a free release and got behind USC cornerbacks out of the gate.
It's weird because we just haven't seen the Utah receivers be all that effective through the first 4 games, and they certainly were against USC. So I don't know if it's as simple as like, oh, just jam them and then they would have like stopped things. But that's the defense that they were trying to play. I think he was leaving some of those guys on an island, like Shotgun mentioned earlier. They weren't getting the kind of pressure when they did send people. He just wasn't pressured all that much, and so now you got to cover guys for longer. I mean, if you're jamming with the line of scrimmage, you can really get beat deep. If you don't have as much help too. So I don't know if it's like a simple fix like that, but nothing really seemed to work.
I mean, if you're playing press coverage, then you need to get jammed. But if you're playing off, then you're not expected to get your hands on the receiver. That was one of the interesting things about why USC threw all those wide receiver screens is you saw how much they were playing off of Drake London. You're just going to keep attack them until – and that's – someone asked Graham Harrell in the postgame, he's like, why didn't you guys take more deep shots? Because that worked against Colorado, right? Well, you're not seeing the same defense. When everyone backs up, you got to take those short ones and just kill them with 10-yard gains over and over again. And that's the thing. And what defenses are doing against USC is if you're not getting that extra block you need to get, that 5 or 6 yard gain, let them get that as many as they can because they're not getting that 15 to 20 yard gain because they're missing that one block.
And they also know USC's not really going to keep doing that, where they do it for a while, but they just it's like a death by 1,000 paper cuts, and you just have to be patient. And USC's just a big play. It's a big play offense. So if you take away big plays, will they be able to matriculate down the field and
without explosives is what Harrell says.
Yeah, without the explosive plays,
They can do. They've shown they can do that. The problem is they make too many mistakes.
Yeah.
Can they do it without making mistakes? And that's what defenses are saying. Like, let's drop everybody in coverage. They'll mess up something.
Yeah.
Whether
Drake
it be
London will catch 3 balls, but then they're going to kick a field goal or go.
Whether it be one of the offensive linemen gets beat and we get pressure and suddenly the 3rd and 7 to Gary Bryant with a better throw, that's a completion and a first down, but Keaton Slovis has got someone right in his lap, or they'll have a penalty. Yeah. Just you kind of count them like, they'll mess up something. That's what defenses basically are saying is like they'll mess up something. Let's make sure we don't give them the big play to give them an easy touchdown. Force them to do it over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's hard to do like 10 or 12 things good in a row, and that's kind of what you have to do. And if you're going to play like that, well, USC's better at screw up, big play, screw up, big play, and yeah.
We got a couple questions about playing young guys, and something we hadn't mentioned yet is that Dante Williams mentioned how on Thursday's practice they're going to have kind of a young guy scrimmage. Are you guys expecting anything or any results to come out of that we could see some differences in the lineup?
No. No, let me think about that. No.
I disagree.
Okay.
I think you could see some guys, and I think it's partly from the comments we've heard from Dante Williams. I think it was post-game that he said, just because you're a junior or senior doesn't mean that you automatically get to start. So with a bye week and that comment, that tells me we're going to give everybody an opportunity to take your job, and we'll see if anyone can do that. Can someone like Kalen Bullock get in because he hasn't got a ton of opportunities the last couple of years? Can Corey Foreman push one of those guys? And, I don't know, who else they're looking for. Jalen Smith. He's seen some time at nickelback. Greg Johnson did not have a good game. Is that a guy that they say, if you play well in this scrimmage on Thursday, maybe we'll give you an opportunity for more opportunities in the game on next Saturday against Notre Dame? So I think it could actually, we see some of the younger guys get some.
The only issue I have is I think we heard the same thing after every game, or even before when he took over, like you have to compete for your job every week. He said that day one, everyone's got to compete for a job. And I don't know, we're not seeing it. I mean, why wasn't Miller Moss in the game at the end there? I'm not saying bench Keem Slowis. I'm just saying get some of the young guys in there and get them to play, and maybe there's a directive from on top, but you're not going to be the head coach next year. Are you worried about his red shirt or whatever? If the player doesn't want to play because of red shirt or something, I don't know. But I'd rather see the young guys in there and getting some run, especially, you've had many opportunities where you're down more than 3 scores in the fourth quarter. I'd like to see some more of that.
We got multiple questions about Jackson Dart's status. Any updates there? He seemed to be walking around pretty well, better than what we saw in practice. So I'm just curious, but we haven't really seen him practice at all.
Ooh, I saw him moving a little bit on the sideline, just tossing the ball around. Check out the Family Feud podcast. That'll be on there.
Ooh.
As I heard it on the sidelines.
Nice. But we'll see. So Tuesday will be a practice, and we can kind of see what,
if he's doing more, because we knew he was not going to dress for this game. He tossed the ball. That's all he did in practice.
Yeah.
If
he
we
did
actually
put pads on and toss the ball.
Yes, but if we see any more action from him besides just tossing the ball,
you will know. You will definitely know. We got a question from a Dog's Life in Portland on YouTube who said, "Don't you think that blaming the quote unquote adults lets off the kids who are sloppy at times and make critical errors?"
I mean, it's tough when you're talking about college kids. Yeah, they're players that screwed up for sure. But as a college head coach and a college coaching staff, you want to put these guys in the best position to succeed. And I just have a hard time believing that all the dysfunction that's been going on, when you have to fire a head coach 2 games into the season, I don't think you're putting your players in the best position. So I'm going to give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt here on that one.
Shotgun?
I got nothing on that one.
All right.
Diego said, if USC goes 4-8, does that mean the head coaching job is less attractive and Bone has to settle for a tier 2 type of head coaching candidate?
No. I mean,
it's not helping. I would say that.
I mean,
I would agree with you.
You're looking at this job as the potential. This is like the best house on the block. It's been run down. It's got the best bones. It's a corner lot. Everything is good about it, but it looks like crap right now. The bushes are dead, and and the roof is leaking and all that stuff. You don't look at that as you're the best real estate agent in town. You look at that and go, I know what the potential is there. It's just like signing a 5-star recruit that's raw. I know what the potential of that player is. I know what the potential of this job is. The fact that it's 4-8 probably is. If I'm taking over, I'm like an alpha head coach. I'd rather the team be 4-8 because then you have you can move up, and you go 8-4 the next year. You've already doubled their wins, and then you're set up. It's kind of like the Pete Carroll first year where they were sort of figuring it out, and then boom, explode on the scene in year 2, and you're winning the Orange Bowl. So yeah, I don't think 4-8 or whatever. If they have some terrible record, it's going to be I'm a great coach. I don't want to touch USC. They just had a bad year with 10 games under an interim head coach. I just don't think a great head coach cares about that.
I thought this was rapid fire.
Yeah, whatever.
Oh, got it back.
Okay, you have no right to do that, Shotgun.
Thank you.
I would say with 4-8 though, you have more chance of losing players to transfer portal or something
Especially
like that.
the one-time transfer rule.
So that can make it more less attractive because if you see a roster with nothing, because the expectations that are at USC.
That's a good point by Shotty.
Yeah.
We got a tweet from
and a quick one.
Steve who said, why does it seem like Orlando can't seem to make any halftime adjustments? You said that's funny.
I mean, the whole 42-3 in the third quarter thing is pretty bad. I wouldn't put it just on Orlando. USC's not scoring points in the third quarter either.
That's been a Helton thing.
That's been
consistently.
Yeah. That's what I would say. It's not like people want to think, fire Orlando, fire, you've cut the head off the snake. You fired the guy you need to fire. Firing Orlando or Graham Harrell right now, what are you going to do? There's no better options that are on the roster. You just have to keep everyone and kind of keep them together, and that's Dante Williams trying to do that. But that's been a Helton thing. It's not. I don't think it's a exclusive to Todd Orlando or Graham Harrell thing. That's just been more about this team just comes out and has been pretty terrible in third quarters. I think it was earlier in the season, it was like 7 of 8 games they didn't score a touchdown in the third quarter. Now it's, it might be like 9 of 10 now or something like that, whatever. But it's been pretty crazy.
I mean, there's times when Orlando puts guys in the right position and they just don't make a tackle. So, what adjustment do you make to that? That's the difficult thing right now. If they were tackling great and getting beat the way they are, then you look at the scheme much more than you do at what is happening during the play. So a little bit more, I don't know, grace there for Todd Orlando just because they aren't tackling. Now, that's his fault. He's as a defense coordinator, he's got to correct that. But as far as the adjustments and stuff, I think he's trying stuff and doing some stuff that is working. It's just they aren't making the plays that they are capable of.
We got multiple questions asking why through Game 5 USC's wide receivers don't have more chemistry with their quarterback.
I mean, I think you're seeing that has actually progressed. I think Malcolm Epps, seeing him make some catches, I think that, on a scramble drill type of thing. My rewatch, I'm halfway in the third quarter. A lot of people were Keaton's staring down Drake London. I'm like, all the passes to Drake London early in the game are all screen passes. There's a couple of them that are over zones coverage, and that's not staring down. So maybe that's later in the third and fourth quarter that I haven't got to yet to really fully rewatch. But that was kind of confusing to me, just seeing a bunch of those comments in my tweets, which maybe that's just a regurgitated thing because that's been the common refrain from people for the last few weeks.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something that's not right. And I don't think losing your head coach has helped either. There's just some weird personalities there. It just doesn't seem to be working right now. You need a great head coach that can be would look in that room and go, why are these guys not talking, or what's going on here? There's something that was going on, and it just doesn't seem. I get it. They've progressed. We've seen Michael Trigg get better. We've seen some guys work, but they had a whole off season together, and it looked like they're sort of meeting everyone for the first time almost. Some of this stuff.
I would say the last 2 weeks we haven't seen a receiver go one way and the throw go the other way.
True. Yeah.
Which we did see Washington State and we did see in Oregon State from 2 different quarterbacks. So. Maybe that is progression. Maybe that is just the plays that they're running and they're more straightforward. I don't know. But I would say that is one thing to note.
Big T wanted to know, and he asked all of us, it's your job to watch and cover this team from beginning to end. How much worse does this feel than 2018 because it looks worse?
I was listening to the Reign of Troy, our friends over there, and I think they were saying this year it looks worse because there was some close games and stuff. The 3 blowout losses at home. To Stanford, Oregon State.
In the easier part of the schedule, or what was expected to be?
Exactly. This is pretty bad, that when Orgeron came in as the interim and they went on a run, they lost to the rivals, but they won some games. They beat number 4 Stanford at home. There was some excitement there, and it's hard to get excited I scored 28 points against Washington State in the third quarter, or beat Colorado, but gave up the most points that they've of any Power 5 team that they played this year. It's just something's. I think this is worse. 5-7, it kind of really got bad at the end. So I guess we can hold judgment till we see what happens at the end. USC could make some kind of run, but man, that season ended really poorly, and losing to Cal and UCLA and Notre Dame, that was bad. But the beginning part of the season, I think this is worse.
Yeah, for us it's worse just because it's bleh. It's the same thing. Yeah. They're just getting dominated in the trenches. I believe that's what Keontae Ingram said. They just got dominated up front. Whereas 2018, it was more they're making mistakes and costing themselves the games. So it was they were in the game, so they're at least exciting games of whether they would win or lose. These are okay, when do the fans leave? Is it going to be 5 minutes in the third quarter? Is it going to be when the fourth quarter begins after the torch is lit? What will it be this game? Because that's been the case the last 3 weeks, or last 3 home games. Sorry.
Also, I feel like with the 2018 season, you could kind of say, hey, what is going to happen with this true freshman quarterback? You came into this season going, hey, this is Keaton Slovis in his third year. What are you there were higher expectations, whereas I think you could kind of have the freshman excuse a little bit for 2018. So I think it's different. A quick answer here. Trojan said, what was going on with all the background music during the post-game press conference? Where USC holds its post-game press conferences is right next to the opposing locker room, which It's horrible timing because whenever there's a horrible loss, you just hear the other team celebrating while like coaches and players are trying to speak.
So,
It's not
which you've
great.
heard pretty much the last 3 home games. And if you go on the Utah football Twitter accounts or social media accounts, you can see the videos and why it was so loud because they're really living it up in there for their first win in the Coliseum ever.
Yeah, there was. It's funny when I left the little. You guys were doing the post game. I did the post game press conference, and I was walking back down through the tunnel, and Ashley Adamson was interviewing Cameron Rising for Pac-12 Network in the tunnel. He had actually stopped when I was going into the tunnel. He had stopped and saw some family members in the Coliseum, and then the Utah staff was like, get in here, Cam." So they made him go in, but then he came back out to the field. And he was actually at his phone, and I was like, what is he doing? And someone was like filming him. He's like on the Coliseum field all by himself. So I tweeted a picture out of him out there. And then I found out from Bill Riley, who covers Utah, and I go on his show a bunch, that he was FaceTiming his mom. So he's like Ventura or something. So
Newberry Park.
Newberry Park. And his mom couldn't be at the Coliseum, so he was FaceTiming her on the field after his big win. I tweeted it out. His mom responded to it and stuff, and a lot of Utah people did. So it was a nice moment out there for him. So you just don't want, there's been some nice moments for USC opponents in the Coliseum. You don't want to see. It's great for them, great kids, but you don't want to see
There's
USC
been a lot of
that.
USC opponents soaking up the post game, the revelry of the Coliseum, and what it is like at night, and that should be USC players, not their opponents.
Yeah, Mario Cristobal. I mean, there's been a lot of people that have done that.
Chloe White said, against the Irish, what is the one stat you value above all others? Time of possession, third down conversions, or the turnover battle?
I go points.
That's a good question.
Score more points, you got a better shot.
Troll Ryan is here, alive and well.
Yeah.
Do you have a real answer? Or are you going to?
Turnover, time of possession means nothing.
Yeah. USC was dominating the time of possession in the first half.
Yeah, it's like who cares? I mean, USC just has to not look incompetent. Maybe that would be.
So you're not going to answer the question, is what
I
you're
don't
saying?
know. No.
Turnover.
Go ahead. Turnover's fine.
For me, I think it might be rush yards. Because
Yeah,
if USC's running the ball well, that means their offense is going well.
Didn't they run the ball well against Oregon State?
In the first half, and then they stopped running it.
But you still ran you came.
I'm
after
talking
the
about
game.
the end of the game.
I know,
If
but
you look at the end of the game,
at the end of the game, they said they ran the ball well.
They said they ran the ball well.
Yeah.
Did their stats look like that? No. We're talking about the stats.
Okay.
Their stats said they did because they didn't run the ball much. But if at the end of the game, USC's run stats look good and Notre Dame's run stats don't look good, that's their strength, is to be able to run the ball. That's where they should be able to pound USC. Their quarterbacks have really struggled. Jack Cohn has been replaced multiple games. Tyler Buckner came in, got replaced last game. He's a true freshman. So, yeah, if their run game's not going well, that is a telling stat in that game for USC.
I mean, USC offensive stats. I think. I was looking at the stats and like, wait, Keats Lewis threw for 400 yards in that game. Like, it means so. Our friend Alicia Dertola says empty calories. There's a lot of empty calories. So I'm not going to say USC rushed for 250 yards. They're going to win the game. Like, no, that could be empty calories.
When will they ever run for 250 yards and lose like they have at the home?
What did they rush against Oregon State? Like, they got over 200, I think.
No, they didn't.
Didn't they? I don't know. Whatever. But
Oregon State did. They ran for 300.
They ran for a lot. Yeah, empty calories, I would say.
Sorry, I'm looking up the box score now. They rushed for 76 yards.
Against Oregon State? I thought they had like a bigger game against them. Who was
wow.
it?
Because they ran the ball well early and then they stopped and they had a couple sacks and
maybe
suddenly
it
it
was.
all gets pulled back.
Oh, the sacks all happen. Okay.
Alrighty, a couple more
If
questions.
they run for 250 yards, they will not be down by 40 points and be like, you know what, we should run the ball right now.
They could.
And we get a couple of breakaway runs and suddenly they're running yard. That's not going to happen.
They could run
They
like
ran the
80
ball-
yards and then like stall in the red zone.
They ran the ball, I think, 7 times in the second half
that's
against Utah.
2 more questions. One from Big T, who said shotgun. Cover your ears, boss man. What are your initial thoughts on the basketball team after
Do
watching
not
2
answer
practices?
this. We are not doing this.
Hey, is this a basketball school now? That's a better question.
Is what?
Okay.
Is USC a basketball school now?
Oh, they're better
The
at
boss
that.
man says you can't answer it, shotgun.
I'm going to answer it anyways.
I know you were going to do that.
It positive reviews so far. Check out the ghost notes for that. Positive reviews so far, but still really early in camp. It's like seeing the first 2 weeks of fall camp or even spring camp for football and being like, oh, this team's definitely a Final Four team. No, it's still really early. We'll see in a couple weeks as they get closer to the season where they're at.
And final question goes to Jasper Smith, who said, bye week, what is the tunnel vision schedule going forward?
We are going to take a little tunnel vision break
Television bye week.
Yeah.
I don't know why I just
I'm
did
going to
that.
go camping in Catalina on Thursday, so, get out of town a little bit. I was up for a Sunday show. So Sunday's probably still up in the air.
Sunday's TBD.
TBD, because, if there's some newsy stuff that happens, but otherwise there probably won't be anything newsy coming into the break. So
Yeah,
we'll be back next Thursday for the preview before Notre Dame for sure. Maybe Sunday a week from today.
Yeah, so that is the schedule going forward. I hope you guys have a good bye week.
Do you want to throw the one up that
Sure.
We got one in there.
You guys can follow us on social media. We'll tweet out if we're having a Sunday show. Or we'll get Ryan to actually tweet out if we're not having a Sunday show. How about that?
Right.
If you get eaten by a buffalo or something, you can update the people.
Yeah, I'll be back on Saturday. I'll be like a day ahead of time.
Okay.
The last time my flight literally a 7-hour delay on the flight. Like, when does that happen? Like,
crazy.
That was kind of nuts when you're coming east.
We got a question, Ryan,
not
you
really
wanted me to
comment.
put up, or a comment that said Ryan Dart needs to start.
So we get a lot of that, right? Where do you guys fall?
Oh, so you want us to answer this?
Well, talk about it too. Like, I wasn't a fan of this. Like, Keaton Slovis is still, PFF had him graded out well.
He graded out
He threw
well.
over 400 yards, dude. Come on. But obviously that does, a lot of empty calories there. If they end up losing to Notre Dame and, you're fighting for bowl eligibility or whatever, I guess you're still fighting for something. Another couple losses, I'd be on board if Jackson Dart comes back healthy, and you want to just start playing younger players. I got no problem with that, but I don't think the fans are like, Dart's going to save everybody. Like, I'm just not into that. Like, it's the offense more than Dart or Slovis or whatever.
If both of them are perfectly healthy going in the Notre Dame game, I don't think you start Dart.
No,
but I do want to see that Dart package. And
That
what
would
can
be
that
good,
add to the offense? Maybe that's the creativity they're missing. And if Keaton Slovis really struggles, which he's playing okay, he's not playing great. And the bigger issue is, can Dart provide a spark? And maybe that's something where you throw him in, and that might be instead of him starting. If things just aren't going well for USC's offense, you say, let's try to do something different and mix it up. And if that happens and he takes over, then you have a different conversation. But just Dart coming back from injury and, hey, he's healthy now, he should start. I don't think that's the case.
we saw that with Oklahoma and Spencer Rattler. Another Heisman, front runner, and you've benched him and end up winning the game. So I don't think anyone should be beyond being benched. But I wouldn't probably go into the Notre Dame game at this point when him coming off the injury. But now the season's pretty much toast. You can play young players, and if Keaton's struggling, you want to use him and bring him in. I got no problem with that.
What's interesting is Dante Williams, when asked questions about what to focus on the bye week, the thing he kept saying was, first we need to get healthy, and he said we have talented players that are not healthy right now, which could mean anything. But part of me was like, is he mentioning Dart? Because as far as injuries, it's not too major, right, Shotgun?
And at one point he said they have, when he was asked about the players, checking out basically for the season, he's like, well, we got two NFL QBs. We got, and he started rattling off different position groups. And I was like, 2 NFL QBs. That's high praise right there for someone in that room.
Yeah.
So someone's getting left out at the same time, it feels like. But Miller Moss hasn't been in a game to actually try to prove himself that he can do that. But, that's high praise there. But I would say that's one of those talented players that they're looking to get healthy. Drake Jackson is one. We didn't actually get an update on him, but he did walk out in a soft boot when he left the stadium. And it was something he was getting retaped multiple times. There were actually multiple players that I saw getting checked by staff, but not necessarily anyone that really came out. I saw Jalen Smith get checked. I saw a couple of the linebackers get checked by the training staff. So they've got a couple guys. There's also some guys that aren't with the program because of off-the-field stuff. If they could get them back, that would help, just adding extra talent to the roster. That doesn't seem like anything's going to be changed there anytime soon, but it would help.
Alrighty, gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up. We'll be back after the bye week. Thanks so much for watching. We love being the USC therapy, if you will, for you
We
guys.
had a lot of people live, so appreciate you coming on there. Yeah,
thank you guys for doing that. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up. That's Shotgun. That's Ryan. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.